Hi, I'm Kim,
I'm Casey.
and we're siblings.
Siblings.
He's my brother.
She's my sister.
Sibling.
Siblings, that's what siblings are.
I know, sibling sounds weird.
Just say, hey,
Okay.
I'm Kim. I'm Casey.
This is my brother.
He's a boy. He's a boy. He's a
real boy.
Let's start over. You start it.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kim,
Hi, I'm Casey.
and this is my brother. Oh, shoot, I was supposed to say, no.
No, you just say, hi, I'm Kim. I say, hi, I'm Casey. We're brother and sisters. We're sister and brother. Something like that.
It really shouldn't be this hard.
No,
is
this
that
is
like
horrible.
split
Start over and just look at the list.
All right.
Just your name, dude. That's all you gotta say.
I know,
Your
stop.
name.
I get camera shy. Hi, I'm Kim.
I'm sorry. Do it again.
I'm Kim.
I'm Casey.
This is my brother.
This is my sister.
Here we go.
Here we go.
We can do this.
We got this. Here we go.
Yeah, piece of cake.
Who is the funniest?
Who's the funniest?
No doubt.
3, 2, 1.
No.
Me.
I am definitely funnier. Ask our mom and dad. I am funny.
For different reasons.
Who is mom's favorite?
Oh.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah, we call him Golden Boy for a reason. Yeah,
Yep.
Casey.
Special.
Whatever.
Special.
I'm Dad's favorite.
Because he feels bad for you.
Who enjoys shopping more?
Oh, this is tough. Because you used to work at Structure.
3, 2,
I get real excited.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah,
Oh.
There we go.
Yeah, I definitely like to shop.
You got that one.
Who is each other's favorite band?
Who is each other's favorite band?
Like, teenage years or...
For your favorite, who's your favorite band?
No, you're writing who my favorite band is, and
That's
I'm
right.
writing who
That's
your
right.
favorite
That's right.
band is.
I thought
3,
you said when we were kids.
2, 1.
GNR. I almost put that for you, and then I thought, this is for church, so I'm going to put Chris Stapleton.
Guns N' Roses.
I do love me some Guns N' Roses.
Who is a better driver?
Oh,
3, 2, 1.
oh yeah. That one hands down. I'm pretty bad.
Bad.
Well, we are in this fourth and final part of this series, Verses, and our goal, our pursuit is to have healthy, thriving relationships. And last week, in part 3, we ended with this question, who do you need to forgive? And I mean, this is a difficult question in of itself, isn't it? We all have people in our life that we know we need to forgive, but they have hurt us deeply. The relationship is so fractured, and just the thought of extending forgiveness, well, I know it was challenging for so many of you. I know that question, for me personally, was a challenging question. But there's another aspect to this question that we gotta look at, we gotta face. In fact, I talked with so many people over this last week, and one of the things that kept on coming to the surface is people were struggling. They want to forgive people. They want to extend that forgiveness. They know how important it is. But in conversation, I started to realize that, the other layer attached to this question that maybe is what you've been struggling with is this. Do you need to forgive you? I mean, we could expand that out. Have you received God's forgiveness for you? You see, forgiving others all gets connected to how you have received forgiveness from God. And sometimes that's the most difficult part of the journey, isn't it? And you see, the more we grasp God's forgiveness for us, the more we understand the depth of God's forgiveness for us, the more we grasp His grace and His love for us that drove Him to forgive us, the more we can get our arms around it, the more, it doesn't make it easy, but the easier it is to start to extend forgiveness to other people. And in this series, we've been looking at, different battlegrounds There's 4 very specific ones. In part 1, we looked at doing right versus being right. And doing right is all about obeying God. Being right is saying, well, it's my own decisions. I'm going to do what I want. The second battleground is reflect versus deflect. Deflect is all about blaming others, but the blame game always ends the same way. Reflecting is saying, what do I own? What gap have I created? The third battleground is forgiveness versus bitterness. When you don't forgive, bitterness, like a cancer, always creeps in. And one of the things I've been saying throughout this whole series is these all get tethered together, and you get to choose which battleground you're going to engage in. But it's this last one. This is the most important, to be honest with you. It's this last one that might be a game changer to, yes, how you forgive others. But more importantly, to start to grasp God's forgiveness to you. And that's renewal versus ruin. You see, when you engage in this side of the battlegrounds, it will lead to renewal. If you don't, well, it'll lead to ruin. One of the essential people that we've been looking at throughout this series is a guy named David. King David is he's a significant person in the entire storyline of the entire Bible. In fact, through David's lineage, Jesus himself is connected. David was the first king God chose to lead over Israel. I mean, Saul was the first one, but the people chose Saul. God wanted someone not what the outward appearance might look like a king, but God was looking at the heart. And when he saw David's heart, he's like, that's my guy. In fact, the Bible talks that David is a man after God's own heart, but David definitely wasn't perfect. But his heartbeat, his desire, his eyes, well, he chose to live a life facing God. Like I said, it wasn't a perfect life. In fact, we have recorded for us in the Bible one of the most sin-riddled stories there is. All gets connected to, David himself. If you read the story before, you're really familiar with it. Maybe you've heard bits and pieces of it, or maybe you haven't heard it at all. But the story, has everything to do with David as king and a beautiful woman named Bathsheba. And the two massive sins that gets connected to David in this one, story is adultery and murder. And so many times the story gets relegated to those two sins. And those two, I'm not minimizing those. I mean, those are two massive sins if we put sin in order, which we as human beings do. I mean, God doesn't, but we do that. And these two sins, they're part of the 10 Commandments. You shall not do these, and David does. But you see, if you know anything about the story, it wasn't just these two sins. It was a lot, it was a lot more than just those two. In fact, we could start making a list, and it would look something more like this. It was lust. When he looked down and saw her, and it was, covetousness. When he saw something that wasn't his and he wanted. Most of the time when we talk about David and Bathsheba, we talk about adultery. She was married, but in fact, the darker part of that sin was he raped her. Maybe you've never heard that before. But remember, David was king. Kings don't ask. Kings don't request. He saw her, sent his men to get her, and she couldn't consent. She couldn't say yes or no because he was king, a position of power, a position, kings don't ask. She knew that. David knew that. And yes, he murdered her husband, Uriah the Hittite, but there's a lot more to that story. He deceived, and there's manipulation. He lied. He abused his power over and over again. I mean, this again, let's just not relegate it to 2 big commandments that he broke. Again, those are bad enough, but it was a lot more complex than that. And, well, the Bible still says he was a man after God's own heart. Definitely not perfect. But as you'll see today, David's heart, his desire, even in his humanity, even in his sinfulness, was to follow God. We have such an amazing, insight into David's journey after he realized the depth of his sin, when he realized the destruction from his sin, when he realized the pain he caused from his sin, when he realized the gap he had created. And David sat down, he wrote these words. You can find it in Psalm chapter 51. And when David came, face to face with a holy God, and his absolute dark sin, he sat down and he wrote these words. He said, "Have mercy on me, O God." He started facing God, saying, "God, I know you're a merciful God, and I don't deserve your mercy, but God, I'm going to ask for your mercy. Please, God, show me your mercy." And he goes, "According to your unfailing love." Now that phrase, unfailing love, was an ancient Hebrew word that we've looked at in this series. It was a word hesed. It had very little to do with emotion, but everything to do with love in action. It had this idea of steadfast love or loving kindness or unfailing love. It's like, hey, God, have mercy to me according to your unfailing love, according to your great compassion. That phrase, great compassion, had everything to do with David's understanding of God's emotional feelings towards him. He's like, God, I know what you feel about me. Then he says, blot out my transgressions, wash away my iniquity, and cleanse me from my sin. Now, David has these 3 very specific lines that all feel, kind of similar, but they're all, that much different. You see, when he wrote, blot out my transgressions, that word transgressions, he could simply have said, I rebelled. That's what it means. It's like, God, I knew the path you wanted me to walk on, but I chose to rebel from your pathway, from your way. I chose to go against you, God. He says, wash away all my iniquity. That word iniquity, it was like he was saying, I'm guilty, 100%. God, no one else to blame. We don't need a trial. I don't need my lawyers. I don't need to spin the story to kind of soften what I chose to do. Hey, God, I'm 100% guilty. It's all on me. And then he says, and cleanse me from my sin. That word sin means to miss the mark or to stray away from God's path. It's like, hey, God, I chose to stray. I knew the path you'd called me to walk on. I knew the path of obedience. I chose to stray. But he said blot. That word blot means like if there's a list of things, he said erase it, strike it out, get it off the list, please. I know I rebelled. Will you just erase it? And then he said wash. Wash had this whole idea if you're wearing like a brand new white t-shirt and you spilled a cup of coffee all over you. He's like, hey, wash. My life has been stained with sin. Will you wash it? And then he says cleanse. That word cleanse was a spiritual ritual of purity. He's like, please cleanse me. He says, for I know my transgressions, and my sin is always before me. Hey, God, I'm staring at my sin. Again, he's owning all of it. I'm guilty. I rebelled. I strayed. God, I know my sins, and they're before me. It was kind of like a song on repeat. He goes, it's just playing over and over and over again. I see it all, and I'll own it all. and against you only have I sinned. Now, yes, did David sin against Bathsheba? Yes. Did he sin against Uriah the Hittite? Yes. Did he sin against the other soldiers and the other people in the kingdom? Yes. But David fully realized his sin started with rebelling against God. The outcome was fractured relationships and destruction here on this earth, but he realized the sin first started between him and God. Because against you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight. So you're right in your verdict and justified when you judge. Surely I was sinful at birth and sinful from the time my mother conceived me. Now, he's not saying this as an excuse. He's just saying to God, hey, God, this world is a broken, fractured place, and I am a sinful wretch. I see it. I own it. I know it. And you desired faithfulness, even in the womb. You taught me wisdom in the secret place. So cleanse me with hyssop, and I will be clean. Wash me, and I'll be whiter than snow. David recognizes that nothing else can cleanse him except for God himself. Nothing. And that's true for me, and that's true for you. There's nothing David could do to get rid of that mark, that stain. There's nothing. He needed God. Let me hear joy and gladness. Let the bones you have crushed rejoice. Hey, God, I'm completely broken in pieces. I'm hurting because I realize what I've done against you. I'm hurting because I realize what I've done against everyone else. God, I'm completely broken. But through my brokenness, I want to rejoice. Through my brokenness, I want to experience joy connected to you again. Hide your face from my sins. He's not saying, God, don't look at it. David just knows that God is a perfect, holy, pure God. He's like, God, I don't want you to see the darkness of my sins. Blot out all of my iniquity. And then he writes these familiar words. Create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me from your presence or take your Holy Spirit from me, but restore to me the joy of your salvation and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. Hey, God, I want to have a willing spirit to follow you, to obey you. You see, when we think about these words that David wrote, the first thing he did, and this is what I would encourage you to do. First thing is you gotta face God. He started right there. Oh, God, have mercy on me. He didn't run from God. He didn't try to ignore God. He just didn't try to do it all himself. He just goes to God and says, hey, God, have mercy on me. God, I know you're merciful. I know about your unfailing love and your great compassion. He faced God. And then David, he asked for cleansing because he realized what his sin, that he strayed, that he rebelled, that he was guilty. He's like, hey, God, cleanse me, blot out, wash. Hey, God, you're the only one. You're the only one. And then he said, this is my sin. Confess his sin. God, I've sinned against you. Do you feel the gravity of that? Yes, his sin impacted Bathsheba, impacted Uriah, impacted soldiers, impacted friends, impacted the kingdom. I mean, it had a whole lot of impact. But he started with God the Father. And then out of all of this, he started to embrace the renewal, the restoration. It's like, I want to rejoice. I'm broken. I'm broken, but I know there's joy that will surface. Say, God, create in me a pure heart. I want to follow you again. I want to do what is right. You see, David's words, these amazing words, hopefully these life-giving words to you came from a moment when he was at his lowest, where he had created the biggest gap between him and God and so many people around him. But he faced God. Face God. My encouragement for you, are you facing God with your sin? Are you facing God with your sin? Lord, we just pause. Lord, you are a merciful God. Your unfailing love and your great compassion just overwhelms me when I think about it. But Lord, my prayer for every single person right now, right where they are, is that they will face you with their sin. They know what it is. I know what mine is. That, Lord, right now, that they will face you. In your name I pray. Amen.